Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last session of MSP University, Get Your PhD in Pipe Jet. You've heard from some of the best and brightest revenue leaders over the last couple days. And for our final session, as I said this morning, the strongest leg of the relay is the final leg of the relay. This session today would not be possible without the sponsorship from the team at ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo, in addition to being a strategic sponsor of MSP University, is also a featured partner of Modern Sales Pros. And as a featured partner, you'll be seeing and hearing from all different folks on the ZoomInfo team, and there's a whole bunch of different programming we'll be doing for MSP over the coming weeks and months. And we are incredibly excited for this topic. As I said, it is the strongest leg, and I am most excited to introduce a first-time MSP speaker, but longtime certified badass, Sean Dwyer, and he's going to be talking about the growth and development of the SDR function at ZoomInfo. Sean, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I am super excited to be here, excited to dive in and, kind of share the growth that we've experienced, the stuff I've experienced since I joined the organization here about 4 years ago. So yeah, I'm ready to dive in.
And I think this just goes really well with the session we had this morning where we had folks talking about, 30 to 50 to 100 person sales development, SDR orgs. This is like the next level of that. What Sean has seen and been through is really, I think it's a unique perspective in modern sales pros. And also he's been there pretty much from the beginning. So really excited to get his perspective on how to build and scale the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yeah. All right. So get the formality out of the way with that safe harbor statement. It's a publicly traded company, all the good stuff. Basically the complete harbor statement is here for your review. And we can move on from that. So one housekeeping item that we wanted to get out of the way, use the Q&A panel. Please upvote, respond to the other questions in there, and make this very interactive. I think it's the best way for the session to go from here. All right, cool. So, I'm here on behalf of ZoomInfo. I've been part of the SDR team here for a long time, and what you're seeing here, right, is kind of the core of the data that ZoomInfo provides. So just to give a little context and background here, right, our data lake, if you will, the data from our CRM instance and the ZoomInfo platform, and how that coupled with everything else we provide is the go-to-market motion and the thing that fuels everything that our customers are doing from a sales and marketing perspective. So, bad phone numbers, bad emails, promotions, new phone numbers, everything that we're cleaning up with all the additional insights here. Right, as we think about this from, employee growth metrics and expansion plans and funding and everything we're providing our customers, it all kind of gets pulled into this lake that we're using to cleanse, enrich, fill out, use on our own behalf, and then obviously let our customers use as well. So with all of that said, right, ZoomInfo helps companies of all sizes go to market, whether you're a Fortune 1000 company, like DocuSign, Sodexo, all the big logos you can imagine, right? Or you're a pallet manufacturer in Alabama. We provide the data on your target market, the technology to leverage all of that, and then surround you with the insights that you need to know who to reach out to, how to reach out to them, what to reach out to them with, what to say, and everything that comes with it. So this has been the core for our model, what we're using internally and what our customers are also getting to use from a sales, marketing, and also a recruiting perspective. We can go to the next slide. So what we're here to talk about in the biggest way, right? An SDR motion, scaling, obviously starting one, getting to a point where you're exceeding 50, 100, 150 SDRs, right? So we do that on accountability. And to do that effectively, we need to operate a high velocity, high efficiency go-to-market engine as a team. And our SDR motion is integral to that process overall. We believe that investing in raw talent, upskilling, coaching, and building a clear career trajectory, right, is there for their long-term success, right? This formula helps us combat industry challenges around retention, productivity, SDR ramp time, and ultimately at the end of the day, sales readiness. So forget the 1 year to 18-month tenure at your organization for your new hire SDR, right? Our SDRs are staying longer. They're bringing their A game every day to be a best-in-class team. That the one thing that we love to tout and be very proud of is our inbound motion, where every single lead that hits our website has a 90-second response time or less, right? It's a game-changing thing that it's a game-changing thing that we've put into play, but right, it only happens with the kind of culture and that accountability buy-in from the top down. So we'll take a look at how we get all that done in action steps that you can take to try to replicate some of the same success and things that we put into play.
Get your notebooks out. That is beyond best in class. That's insane. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. So we go to the next slide here. So really everything we do is data driven, right? Obviously we're a data company. That's one type of data, right? But we use all the information internally to make decisions about how every single thing goes. So it all starts with our go-to-market team and how it's structured. Everything is broken down into specialized roles. It all starts with the demand generation marketing, leveraging our own data to optimize lead flow and ultimately campaign effectiveness, right? From an inbound and outbound perspective. This feeds our sales development teams, which are broken out ideally into 3 different roles at the kind of highest level. So we have inbound SDRs, right, that are fed solely on our inbound leads, the hot leads that are hand raisers, right? That's how we like to refer to them. Then we've kind of got this in-between team, right? Our SWAT SDRs, if you will. They're handling warm leads through the channel, webinars, downloads, display advertisement, you name it, right? Obviously in-person events, not so much recently. And then we've got our outbound SDRs who are cold calling in a very targeted nature, leveraging the data fed to them from our data lake, as I referred to already, which is ingesting data both from the platform and the CRM. So, from there, right, with this kind of progression, as you're saying, right, we move to the new sales team. The AEs are delivering the demos, right? So they close the deal. The customer onboarding team follows. Their sole focus is getting customers provisioned, trained, integrated, all those things. And then lastly is our overall customer lifecycle management team, where we nurture and grow customers. And we're confident that operating with specialized functions is the best in class way that sales organizations can go to market and scale. As soon as we made the shift, our conversion rates from our inbound leads just skyrocketed, right? As you can imagine from a quick turnaround, we saw immediate results. So now you kind of have the big picture. We can take a look at what all this looks like from the SDR perspective, right? How do they feed this model? And how are we training them and driving a performance-based culture at the core of everything, and how accountability allows us to promote from within too.
And Sean, can I hop in here? Because you've been there, I mean, you've been there really from the earlier days of this. How long was the journey to get from where you started? And maybe talk a little bit about what the sales development function looked like when you got to ZoomInfo versus what it is now, which this is a very elevated form of sort of the sales development org.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I walked through the door, there were 20 to maybe 25 total SDRs. There was inbound and outbound and no additional specialization beyond that. Some of the things you see on the far left here, right, like lead scoring, enrichment, I mean, those weren't baked into all the leads coming through the website on day one. So when you can do that, right, and you can use your own platform, which is a data source, right, to fill in the gaps, right, fill in the missing phone number or email before it hits an inbound SDR's inbox, right, it's going to increase the conversion rate drastically. What we had then was, somebody hits the website, probably a minute or two later, then the lead starts coming through the system, finally gets to the inbound SDR, and then we try to get in touch with them as soon as possible without all the sophisticated automation that we have today. Obviously, volume has progressed for us as well. Right now, it's a lot more volume that we're seeing, and the automation is key. But without the ability for a scoring model, an enrichment model, and then obviously using some of our own tools from our own platform, if you will, 90-second response time doesn't happen without all of that. Yeah. So it's, you could grab all the technology in the world, but without the proper kind of setup and A/B testing, it's really hard to do.
I want to highlight something that Sean just said there to make sure our audience picked up on it. But we talk about this a lot in MSP, and I think every panel has mentioned it to date. So Sean, kudos to you for teeing this point up really, really well. That process needs to start with a whiteboard. It needs to really be understood of what it should be, and then technology is deployed to accelerate it. It's incredibly important. We see these conversations in the community all the time. I just spent X dollars on this tool, and it didn't solve this problem for me. Turns out you just automated a bad process, and now you're doing bad work much more quickly. And ZoomInfo, no surprise, solved for some of those process challenges. It started to accelerate with technology here. But Sean, I just wanted to make sure folks picked up on that. I'm sure they haven't heard it enough yet.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's awesome. Okay, I'm good to go to next slide here. So, we'll see this slide, actually the same one more time after this, but for me, it's like enter the ZoomInfo method, right? That's where we are here. One of the aspects we're really proud of is growing our team internally, right? So we think that this is one of our keys to success, right? The SDR Motion that we've built allows us to use the SDR team also as a feeder to the AE team, as well as other business units within the company. So it starts with us going out to the market, bringing in people at a relatively low or moderate OTE, first job, second job out of college, and we're able to get get value from them right in the first 2 weeks, right? They're on the phones by the end of their second week, but that only happens with securing the right talent, right? So question is, how do we hire? So first, we screw this up, like in the biggest way you could possibly screw this up. So we'd hire 4 salespeople, and then we'd fire 4 salespeople 3 months later, right? And we went through this cycle over and over again, and we just weren't getting the right people, and ultimately they just weren't sticking in the seat. So at a point, it finally came where we just said, like, why don't we just take all of the top salespeople that we have, all of the top SDRs that we have today, and give them different tests to try to understand if there's some common trait that they all have, right? So for us, and then in that instance, it turns out that they were all pretty smart. We gave them all a cognitive assessment at the time called, it was the Omni cognitive assessment. And we noticed everyone there was scoring 70, 75% or above. And that was our thing, right? It might be different for every other organization. It might not be your thing to use as this benchmark, but you should test your good sales reps and understand what the trait is, right? What is the common theme across your highest producers? Here it was the cognitive ability, and we really leaned into it. Like, I think part of what it is like we move so fast, right, as an organization, and the ability to have smart people who catch on quickly, that don't necessarily need to get pulled along. We move at a speed, so they need to do that as well and keep up with the operation, because process will get you so far, automation will get you so far, but you also need to catch on to things. And with an evolving product and obviously an evolving company with all the change that we've experienced, it was a crucial piece for us to add to the puzzle there. So we started incorporating the cognitive assessment into the hiring process and doing that upfront work to find the right quality SDR, if you will, right, to improve our retention rate. And it did, right? Our new hire retention rate went from 50% to 90% just by implementing a cognitive assessment.
That's really impressive, especially when you start to think about some of the latest metrics. SDRs have a very high failure rate, even more so than, I think it's less than 18 months is the tenure. Yes. 60% of them wash out and end up as SDRs again. So it's not even like they were made so successful they moved on to an AE job at a different organization. It's that they just didn't pull it off as an SDR and are now an SDR again somewhere.
Yeah. So that just became like a very core piece of what we were doing. And it was a dramatic change to the business overall. So all of a sudden we could go out and hire people and they would stick in the chair. Like I said, that was not happening to us before. Then we take them through the qualitative assessment too, right, where they're meeting people in the sales leadership team, the VP of sales development, the managers and directors, and even the VP of sales in some instances, because what a better way to have alignment between the SDR group and the account executive group than getting the AE leadership to see who's coming in the door as potential future closers on their team. So we're looking for a variety of these different traits, right? Beyond the cognitive piece, so the qualitative side, and coachability became like the most apparent thing for us. When you're talking through an interview and you ask somebody to pitch you on your own product, and you can provide them with pointers at the end and ask them to do it again, are they going to give you the same pitch, or are they going to screw up, but they're going to try to implement the things that you just coached them on? Like, I'll take that person 10 times out of 10, right? Because I know that they'll be covering everything that I asked them to cover, right? And they're just going to master it, hone it, and get better at it. So it's been really interesting. It's a very important piece of our puzzle. Our SDR team's grown more than 10x since 2015. And that number continues to grow. Like I said, when I started, we were between 20 and 25 people. Today, we're just north of 190 SDRs. And it's been quite a journey to get there, but a lot of these things have played, I can't even stress how crucial of a role along the way to get us to that point. So, and like when we talk about the qualitative piece and coachability and all these, these are the same reps we have on the phone with CEOs and VPs of sales and marketing all on the way within the first couple of weeks of their job, right? So they're adding value, they're handling hot inbound leads, they're setting meetings for the sales team. And I think this is why hiring raw, coachable talent and structuring your team into some specialized functions, right, is really important. Like, it allows the individual to learn something, refine that skill, and then ultimately master it, right? Our inbound SDRs are held accountable, like we just talked about, Rich, like for a 90-second response time, attendance rate on their meetings, qualification rate. They're responsible for confirming prospect details and rescheduling calls, and they need to have a value add, right? Like, looks like we haven't been able to connect. What do we need to show you, right, to ensure that you're going to be there? Like, that's at the core of their being. So this qualification process kind of signals what's going to be worth the account executive's time, right, at the end of the day. We can go to the next slide. Like I said, we'll come back to this exact chart and we'll cover that a little bit further. But how to hire the right kind of style, just kind of a recap on that last piece there, right? Like, audit your top sales reps to identify some common traits that are driving the right business outcomes. Incorporate the same cognitive assessment into your hiring process, or whatever that thing is that your organization is going to do, right? For us, it was a cognitive assessment. The qualitative piece always has to be there, right? Have them meet your team. Meet reps on the team, meet the leadership group that they'll be reporting to, or meet the leadership group that they may eventually report to, and just know that like that kind of visibility and transparency is there within your organization. And I think testing for coachability with a pitch prompt is a really great exercise to implement, to understand, just how quickly people are going to take the advice that you give them and actually put it into action.
I chuckle about this one a lot, and it's like, oh, what do you mean we're going to make them pitch? It's like, yeah, you're going to make them pitch, and they're going to be bad at it, and then you're going to coach them, and you're going to see how they take that coaching, just like you will when they start pitching your product.
Right. And for me, you think about it, Richard, it's like, hey, like if somebody really wants to work at your organization, they're going to need to be able to talk about what it is they're applying for, right? So don't come and be like, well, pitch me on my product. Well, I don't know it. Well, no preparation, usually not a good sign, right?
It's funny too. It's the same thing that you see with where the written aspect. There's certain SDR roles where there's just a lot more writing. Have them write a freaking email.
Yeah.
Look at how they're responding. Look at the thank yous that you're sending. I don't want to tube on this, but it's one of those ones where it's just like, this is such a quick win for so many organizations that it's just like, we got to stay on it for a second. But gang, if you're not doing this, you're really selling yourself short.
No, it's a great exercise, Richard, because at the close of a meeting, like, you may be torn, right? Or excuse me, at the close of an interview, it's a great thing, right? Like, hey, send me a follow-up email, right? Or send me a follow-up LinkedIn message, right? Like, you think you have a strength in one area or the other, like, let's see it, right? Close me. And I think it's a really great way to like kind of sure thing hire, or kind of lean me one way or the other, because I've asked for them, honestly, and I've gotten, yeah, Sean, thanks for meeting with me today. Looking forward to hearing from you. Yeah, it's like, that's not what I was looking for. Like, so yeah, it's a really great exercise. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. No, some comments in the chat panel too. Yep, Sierra Summers just saying like, yeah, hey, we have them write some emails to us, and as long as it's passable, we know what we can coach them on. But that also comes from organizationally knowing what you can actually train somebody to versus what you need to have. As an old CRO I used to work for, say, like, you can't coach height. And if you need to have height to do what you're doing, you got to hire tall people.
Yeah.
It just depends on your organization, which is what Sean was hitting on before, right? Looking at your top performers, seeing what they have, making sure you can make top performers. It starts there.
Yeah, without question. Okay, we can go to the next slide here. So one thing that was really worth, highlighting was, talking about that 90-second response time, but like really giving kudos like to the inbound team and what this kind of looks like. The investment translates to this in real time, right? On the new business side, our marketing team generates, 12,000, 13,000 hot inbound leads a month. And we have a dedicated group of more than 70 SDRs whose sole focus is to handle these leads with care as fast as they can. From those 12,000 leads, we're looking at 70 plus SDRs booking 6,500, 7,000 meetings in the course of a month. And how are they, how fast are they responding, right? We talked about the 90 seconds, but we're able to route those leads into the system and respond in 90 seconds. And doing that is like, we consider best in class. And, like I said earlier, you can't just buy technology and hope that this works, right? You need to have a process. You need to test things to understand, like, how are you routing them, right? Why are they going to certain people? Who's the specialized role that they're going to? Or is your inbound team getting requests from current customers and new business prospects? Who's dealing with each of those? Like, how much time is it spending? Are they spending just trying to sort who is a customer and who's not a customer? Like, specializing those roles is really, really important, and something we put a lot of time into, because what used to be simply an inbound team and an outbound team, has progressed to a customer inbound team and a new business inbound team and a customer outbound team and a new business outbound team. So it's progressed over time as we've identified things in the data and understood what was coming to the site and how frequently, and then we dedicated the heads and the resources to adequately route those and book those meetings. So it's definitely been a learning process, but just understanding what's coming through is the biggest thing in the world that you can figure out. Is like, if you don't know what's coming through and where it's coming from, that's where you got to start, right at the end of the day. So to move on to the next slide, which is more about the outbound motion, right? We're able to move them from the inbound team to an outbound team. I alluded earlier to the SWAT team. They call people who've visited the website but didn't fill the form out, right? Downloaded a white paper but haven't agreed to a demo or to get free data. So that team's kind of in between, right? They're warm leads. They've been nurtured. They know who we are. They're just not raising their hands yet. And then later they'll move on to the outbound motion, where they operate in more of a hunter role, and they primarily focus on cold calling into targeted accounts and setting meetings for the AEs. If you want to continue to scale, right, you have to proactively go out in the market. You need a process and a team built to be able to go out and find people who are or should be interested in what you do, right? You have to do interruption marketing. You have to go out and simply say, hi, I'm ZoomInfo, and here's what I do and why you should care, and we need to talk. You have to bring that motion in, otherwise you really tie your ability to scale directly to how fast you can scale lead volume and maintain that quality, no less, and that's a really difficult thing to do.
Well, and I think the other part too is there's certain types of motions that work well for certain types of buyers, and others you're going to have to go outbound for. One thing I did, and you touched on this a little bit before, and I want to make sure we hit on it a little bit throughout there, Sean, is you mentioned there's kind of the customer outbound team and then the cold outbound team. How are those set up? Are they different? Is it still the same kind of structure if we're going against customers versus cold prospects?
Yeah, so I mean, there's some alignment, and there's certainly obvious differences there, right? When you think about the customer outbound team, which is a new kind of, I don't know, progression for us in the SDR world. We've dedicated teams to different tiers of our customer base, commercial or SMB, mid-market enterprise. You can think about it like that, and identify, what the role for each of them needs to be, right? Are there more renewals in a certain segment versus is there more white space opportunity in another segment? When you go after the enterprise size customers, ideally, right, they're going to spend more and they're going to have more licenses with us. And typically what we find is, a sales org has bought access, but the marketing side of the house doesn't know about it. So, right, we take it upon ourselves to educate the marketing side of the house there and make sure that they do understand what the capabilities are and that they should talk to us about getting their own access and vice versa. And it's really different along the way, but you think at the end of quarters and at the end of the year, all the renewals that may have to happen, it's a really great thing to have an SDR team dedicated to getting in front of the stakeholders on the other side to understand where their needs are at, what they need to talk about, and when they're going to be ready to discuss those things. It's a work in progress as we've continued to build it out, but we have outbound SDR supporting the customer base from our smallest clients to our largest clients, just trying to identify additional, pockets of revenue.
Yeah, and one question on this, just to set the context for the audience here.
Yeah.
How many customers does ZoomInfo have now?
I think on our last report, it was about 20,000.
Yeah, it's big. So there's a lot of opportunity there for folks that are just trying to be like, oh, well, if you only have 100 customers, I don't know if it makes as much sense. It might, but with 20, 30,000 customers, you're in a spot where there's certainly opportunity to grow and to scale there.
Yeah, without question. And that's why it came along later, because to your point, maybe the customer base just wasn't big enough for us to dedicate the resources. And then after time, we realized, okay, now this is worth the time, the money, and the hiring resources to get people in these seats.
It definitely feels like there's some math or some equation there, right? Where you've got like an account manager with a certain size book of business.
Yep.
That had a certain type of sales motion against it, where there's a white space there that the AM may not get to because he or she is focused on other activities.
Without question. And that's it, right? It's a strategic pairing so that they're meeting regularly and they're talking about the accounts and the opportunity at each of them. So not everything has to fall on the account manager, right? Some of it can fall on the SDR to go out and make the calls and send the emails and deliver, all the value in the world just to get them to come to the table to really talk about, fine details, if you will.
It's interesting. Now that we're having this conversation, I'm starting to see a little bit more of what you meant by like, this is a feeder system into really ZoomInfo. It's not just, I'm going to be a little junior inbound SDR and I'm going to grow up to be an outbound SDR and then a strategic and then an AE and so on. It's like, now I could get into a bunch of different roles with that. And the skill set's nuanced, but still requires that clock speed, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. You bring in individuals to join the org and they learn how to talk about the product and how to talk about or talk to prospects, I should say. And then, I mean, you can carry that into any org, right? Whether you're an AM or an AE or sales ops or rev gen or whatever it is you want to do long term, like you need to be able to talk about the product and you need to be able to talk to other people. So
it's funny. It's such a valuable skill to have, even if you go into some of the back of the house disciplines, right? Even in finance, having some empathy for what the people in the revenue or go-to-market org is facing. Certainly, I always loved it when the CFO understood what I was trying to do. Didn't always help, but it was a good thing to have. We actually have a live question coming in here from Sierra. And just if you have any benchmarks or thoughts on this, Sean, that's totally fine. But the ideal ratio of, inbound BDRs to AEs.
So how many we have in total?
Yeah, what do you think it should be for an organization? I know it's going to depend a little bit on the inbound volume, but do you have a sense of how much volume maybe one inbound SDR could handle at a given point in time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. We have, like I said, about 70, 75, and I think, roughly they're getting 8, 10, 12 leads a day, maybe, right? Like on a given day. I think maybe, 8 to 10 would be a really ideal state consistently, right? If you could, what's the word I'm looking for? If you could influence that level of lead flow inbound every day, right? Like that would be a really great thing, but it does. It all comes down to how many leads are coming in. You only need so many heads to adequately, reply in a reasonable amount of time. But for us, it's skewed, if you will, that kind of ratio, because we look at it from just like total SDRs, inbound and outbound, to total account executives, because we pair outbound SDRs with account executives for the, like you can see on this slide, to do some strategic hunting, to work open opportunities and progress pipeline along and get those sales cycles to obviously the close. But it's interesting. We always wanted the outbound pairings to be 1-to-1. Sometimes they're a little bit more spaced out. Maybe an SDR supports 2 AEs from an open pipeline standpoint. But it's just how many resources can you dedicate and how many do you need to based on the volume. I think that's the number one indicator.
Yeah, and just for context, just to hit on the point that Sean said at the beginning, right? The ZoomInfo, it seems like the math's out to about 8 to 8.5 leads per inbound SDR per day, kind of like a clock. But the hard part is getting it to that point where it is like a clock.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. And it's not just, the output per day is not just the conversion on the live leads, but it's also going back through the unconverted ones, because for as many people that we do reach in 90 seconds, there's enough that we don't. And for whatever reason, you could fill out a form, close your computer and walk away and then not answer your phone. And then we catch you 2 days later and you still want to take that meeting. It's having a system in place to also go back after those, which I think is extremely important, because they're all valuable, right? There was interest at one time or another, whether it was 2 days ago or 2 months ago, something caught their eye, something caused them to go to the website and fill out a form. There's something to be discussed there, right? There was a pain point they wanted some type of information on, and it may still be relevant. So you might as well go back after them.
Well, and it's kind of, this is also very telling, right? This is kind of a last mile problem that we have, where we got a ton of data about people and then somebody raises their hand. At that moment, when they submitted the form, they were ready, and now maybe they're off. Maybe the dog busted into the room, and they got to go take care of that. There's a lot of variance here, so I like that concept. We got a bunch of questions coming in here. I'll fire this one your way. So this is about the customer-facing BDRs, and alignment between the customer-facing BDRs and the customer success organization. So where does the BDR kind of end, and where does customer success or account management begin? And maybe it's worth it, Sean, just to define what those terms mean at ZoomInfo, to help folks understand, like, AM means this, customer success, if it exists, means this, BDR means this.
Right. So the account manager is ultimately responsible for the renewal, upsell, and any actual contract executions for the existing customer base. Our customer success managers are ultimately there to support the relationship. So helping with onboarding if necessary, helping with trainings and integrations if necessary. But they're basically just managing the relationship behind the scene, providing resources, whatever the case may be, admin settings, whatever they have to do to support that person. And then the SDR is actually pursuing meetings. So the customer success manager is not going to do any type of outreach to schedule a meeting for the account manager. They're basically like they're deployed to help the relationship in certain instances, join calls with the account manager. The SDR will actually proactively go out and pursue a follow-up meeting to identify a space where we could actually provide a ton of value. Hey, your marketing team's not using this. Hey, your sales team's not using this. So from who's going to set a meeting, it's the AM or the SDR, and the CSM, our customer success manager, is just going to be there to foster and maintain the relationship, right? Because to your point earlier, like you said, like the account manager, hey, like maybe they have a huge book of business and they can't get to every single person every single day, or there's a request that comes in that the customer success manager can handle on behalf of the account manager. It's a pretty strategic role, but for the sake of our conversation from the SDR perspective, like the SDR is making calls into the account, sending emails into the account to pursue revenue at that point.
And I feel like a good way to think about this would be if you're, let's think about like our conglomerate. I think conglomerates are always easy ways to think about this. If you've sold ESPN, right? My customer success managers building a great relationship with the team at ESPN. The AM is making sure we're contracting and expanding, and maybe they're trying to talk to Disney or ABC. The SDR, right? Just, and I want to make sure, and Sean, let me know if I'm off on this, but the SDR, the customer facing SDR, would be trying to get into, let's say it was Disney or ABC or whatever it is. So that's kind of some clear rules of the road there. Hopefully that answers the question for you, Magda, but I think that example plus Sean's explanation is pretty solid there.
Yeah, that would be it, right? There's this big company and we only deal with one part of the parent subsidiary, right? We would absolutely deploy SDR resources to bring in a meeting with one of the other companies.
Yeah, love it. And then one more question on this, and this is actually related to what the slide that we're on here.
Yeah.
SDRs, how do your outbound SDRs balance the sort of the prospecting net new accounts versus the customer accounts? They're different teams, right?
Yes, they're completely different teams. Yeah. So like there's a team that only does new business and there's one that only does customer. So yeah, there's no crossover there.
Yeah. And just for context too, for folks who maybe joined a little bit later, there's 20,000 and growing ZoomInfo customers. So there's a big base of folks that are up and running with ZoomInfo today.
Okay. So yeah, this slide, it's pretty straightforward, but it's one thing just to kind of show how our new business outbound motion kind of progresses. So when you move from the inbound team to the outbound team, you're call it the pooled outbound group, where it's many SDRs booking meetings for many AEs across the different tiers. Going back to what we talked about earlier with like the scoring model, we have a distribution engine, we have quotas assigned. So we always know who the next AE is up in the queue within a certain segment, who needs the next meeting, because it's all kept balanced, right? There's no playing favorites. There's nothing like that. We route meetings to the next available AE who needs the next meeting. And that's how it's set up. And then from the pooled system, you go into a paired system. So think about this as like a senior SDR or we call it gold SDR. It's kind of that last pool of outbound SDRs before you're ready for your promotion. And they're actually working in that pairing, right? So there's the mentorship with the account executive. You strategically, hunt down new accounts. You go after open pipeline together to bring back, obviously, more money, get these things to the finish line. But that's a very strategic pairing when you're doing one-to-one targeted accounts. And then, right, you see we collaborate across the board. So think commercial, corp, strat as your SMB, mid-market, enterprise plus. We can go to the next one here. And when we look at this, right, I told you we'd come back to this. So we're proud of the fact that we can move these SDRs into, call it a commercial or an SMB AE role in about 12 months. That's the average that we've seen for our SDRs, is about 12 months to join another business unit. And all the while we're getting value from them right during this process. So from the commercial segment, they move to, corporate or mid-market, and then enterprise or enterprise plus. And when you look at that, like when we look at career progression, like imagine coming out of college and being a rock star AE in 3 years, making 3-4x the OTE you started with. Like that's the idea. Like, and that's a real thing that happens with our SDRs that go above and beyond, right? They are in a position to make leaps like that to before the age 25, be in a really, really great position with the company to continue to grow forward. And it's really cool to watch that, right? To bring in somebody, to interview them, hire them, and then watch them excel. I think it's like the most rewarding part of the role, to know that like they really ran with the opportunity.
You have to love that to be an SDR leader. You can't, that's what you got to live for.
Yeah, 100%. So like, we look at things, right? And in contrast with, other companies that go out and have to buy all this talent, right, for their account executive team. They bring them in, then it takes them a couple of quarters to get them fully ramped. And we're able to do that in maybe 12 months. And we're able to get value, right, like I said, every step of the way. And we have the next generation of account executives ready for their call up to the major leagues, right? And we can promote from within in a really big way. So having this process ingrained in what we do is a huge advantage for us, in our opinion. And by the way, like I said, and you alluded to this, Richard, like they also move all across the company. So the SDR motion drives placements in product marketing and engineering and account management and everywhere you could think of. It truly acts as a feeder system or farm system, if you're a baseball fan, right, for the rest of the company. And we've had SDRs get promoted into a dozen or so different roles just in the last couple of months.
Are there certain paths, like obviously into sales is probably, or into like quota carrying AE feels like the most common. Are based on those other non-AE roles, is there one or two that are maybe the most common that you've seen?
Account executive and account manager would definitely be 1 and 2. Customer success is a really popular. Obviously, SDR leadership continues to grow as the team grows. So we've had a lot of promotions within our own team to have that happen. And marketing and rev ops and anyone with a technical background or an analytical background may take the road less traveled, right, with their promotion path. But it's awesome because everybody finds the perfect fit for them.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's one of the things we were talking about this morning in terms of managing the Gen Z remote millennial, right, career, or the remote SDR, career paths, career ladders, optionality, all of those things matter. And you're seeing it in action here, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So and that leads me to this part, right? Like imagine being able to pitch this kind of career progression to candidates for the SDR job, right? Because I can say it confidently, right, without feeling any guilt because I've watched it happen over and over again to other people, right? We know it's a daily grind, but this is the potential reward for you in a year, 14 months, 18 months from now. We can say, come in and work hard and you'll have all the potential to earn the opportunity to move anywhere in the company that you want to. And while anyone can say it, I don't think anyone's really done it with the countless examples that we've had in a really short period of time. I know they're out there, but you know how I feel about ZoomInfo. And it's just it's really great examples across the board. Like our VP of sales development, my boss was selling coffee door to door before he came to discover org ZoomInfo. And almost every director and manager started in an individual contributor role. So it's a really cool story to tell. And it's a big motivating factor for the team and it helps the company. And I think it's just a win-win across the board for everybody. So we can go to the next slide here, right? So the ultimate goal, right, is how to upskill the total SDR team, right? And I touched on a lot of these points. We'll call this a recap again, if you will, right? But creating specialized SDR functions to really gain the control over your lead funnel and to promote from within is a huge thing to try to tackle. But I think it's incredibly important. Build a structure with milestones to progress the SDRs. I think having really concrete metrics and numbers to hit to go after is obviously a great place to start, and accelerators and incentives and spiffs along the way, right? Everybody loves a spiff in sales. So you can incorporate consistent training, right? Mentorship, real-time feedback mechanisms. Like this rep to manager ratio is a really big thing for us, where we don't really ever like that to exceed 7 or 8, because then the feedback loop from rep to manager, manager to rep, it takes too long. And they don't get the kind of support that they need, right? They would need to ask questions. They need feedback from you as a leader. And it's a really valuable thing to us to make sure that we really stay on top of, because once that bandwidth goes out the door, then we start seeing a decrease in our efficiency and our overall output. And it's not good for the individuals, and it's not good for the business as a whole. And then I think the really big thing is to continue to communicate the career progression points, the expectations, timelines, and ultimately the skill set. Because I think that's another piece that sometimes gets missed is, hey, here's the timeline, do what you got to do. But it's like, hey, if someone's really getting close to that promotion time, like be a leader, right? Be a mentor to them and say like, hey, these are the things that I've watched people before you really excel in, and they got their promotion, right? First time around. They didn't get passed over. These are the things that I think you should be working on, and I'm happy to work on them with you. So you let me know what you want to do. And I think that type of just constant in their ear, if they know that you're on their side and you're there to help, it's such a game changer. And then once everybody adopts that and buys into that kind of notion, then we're all working towards a common goal.
I think there's a lot here, and there's actually a question that's come in about what you were talking about kind of at the beginning, right? This KPIs and metrics and all that. What do you think the important KPIs are for the inbound SDRs? And then there's a second part to this of like, how do you manage thinking about those metrics that are in their control versus those that are maybe from the demand gen or the marketing team, like lead quality as an example?
Yeah. So inbound KPIs, the response time, I think, is number one. We've covered that a couple times. I think general activity output, calls. I don't think you can see it over my shoulder, but my favorite sign in the world, it says your 4-paragraph email sucks, pick up the phone. I'm a big proponent of using the phone, and I think it's your best friend as a salesperson. Calls, response time. I think talk time is an important one to understand. Like, are we getting in and out? Or are we really getting to the core of the problem that the prospects are looking for help with, that we can solve? And then when we look at lead quality and how that overlaps, we've actually gotten rather sophisticated with such a process where we have a very kind of call it a complicated algorithm to me, where it scores every lead that comes in, and anything that doesn't meet a certain threshold doesn't actually get routed to the team, right? So there's no negative implications on response time and conversion for those reps. They're only getting the leads that we want them to convert based on this model that we've built. So from that perspective, it doesn't go against the marketing demand generation team's number as a non-converted lead, and it doesn't go against the SDR as a non-converted lead. It's just like it never happened. It's there, and it's not something we're going to pursue just because the model we build is based on years of data on what is our ICP, if you will. And if something doesn't meet a threshold based on company type, industry, size, title, whatever the case may be, those don't even get routed to the team to deal with.
And I think that's an important part there too. ZoomInfo is doing some very, very sophisticated stuff, but it is actually very elegant the way Sean just explained it. Who's your ideal customer profile? Who's the persona that's going to be buying? Who have you had success with? You don't need a big data lake and a team of folks with white lab coats to figure that out. You can be intellectually honest with yourself as a go-to-market leader and say, hey, we generally sell to quick service restaurants and the leaders of digital marketing there. If an inbound lead comes in from Weyerhaeuser paper products, probably not quality. Don't want to spend sales cycles or marketing cycles on it, just as an example. So keep that in mind too. What Sean's talking about is very sophisticated, but there's some really simple first principles that he's bringing up here as well.
For sure. We can go to the next one here, right? So this is really important, right? Accountability for a high growth culture. In order to succeed, right, we realize that it's going to require an overall cultural commitment, right, from the entire team. And I think that's what separates us right now from some of our competitors and some other companies in the market, because there's there's thousands of places where culture can blow this whole thing up, right? So our team is committed to executing and ultimately takes pride in what they're able to accomplish. And I think that's a really important thing. And to add to that, like the SDRs, promotions are based on merit and merit alone. They know that if they work hard, they better their chances of becoming an AE in less time than the average. When we first set targets for our reps, we'd hear things like, what if I'm in the bathroom and I can't meet the response time, or I'm away from my desk, or what if I'm on another call? Because we made this cultural commitment to what we're doing and then explained why it's so important, like then the team cared, right? As much as we cared, they started caring about it. And then we, as a result, were able to create a smarter system, right? And a smarter process for every one of those quote unquote issues that were brought up, right? So in the bathroom where you had to step away, turn your router off. That lead gets routed to the next SDR, never hits your inbox. You don't get hurt for the slow response time. The company doesn't get hurt from the slow response time. And none of that's really possible without the team buying into the culture. One funny thing to note that is also why people take it seriously is Henry, our CEO, loves to be a secret shopper. So he will submit an inbound request just to see that the 90-second response time is being met. And I'm happy to report that it is met just about every single time. So he checks up on it because it's important to him. And he hasn't gotten too far away from things where that's no longer a priority for him. It is because it matters to the customer base too. Next slide here. I think we're coming to the end, maybe one more after this, but a couple of things here, right? The summary, you got to create an infrastructure to support specialization within your team's SDR motion. And then you need to break down what an SDR does, right? Who they interact with, what tools they use, how the tools and resources or processes they're working are being optimized, and what checkpoints they need to hit to progress to the next stage. Make sure that people have activity metrics, like I mentioned earlier. They're focused on the right activities, and ensure that is, that's what's happening constantly. It's the foundation for how you set them up for success. And I think we've done that and continue to do that pretty well. Because of the infrastructure we have in place, we're able to look at real time how many leads were created every week, whether the SDR outbound created those, or if they were marketing generated, how many of those are converting to demos, and if not, how can we optimize it? If we're talking about SDR from the outbound perspective, we can see how many appointments every day that they're creating, every week, every month, how they're mapping to their goals, and all these different things. So like you see here, right? Checkpoints and optimize the tech, and mentorship from both SDR leadership and the account executive team is super important, and clear expectations and metrics and KPIs. Like, be transparent with the team, right? It's going to pay off in the long run. If they know what they're chasing and what they're after and what they've got to do, they're going to be more effective. And the specialization, right, where it applies, and for the place that your team is in, whether it's inbound and outbound or customer or new business or whatever the case may be, is just know what you're working with and then deploy the resources accordingly. And that's going to be the biggest takeaway. Richard, I don't know, do we have one more slide here?
We've got, no, it's just, we're moving on to live Q&A. Oh, do we have, no, this is.
Yeah, we're good. Q&A is good.
That's it. Yeah, no, we're rock and rolling here. So we're on to live Q&A here. And I think we've got Sean for a few more minutes here. But any live questions you have, get those in the Q&A panel. So Sean, I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. Yesterday we had KD, Kevin Dorsey, the man himself, lead us through a keynote on what the future of sales looks like. KD had a hot take that sales is too specialized. Way too specialized. You've got people that don't know how to prospect closing deals. You've got people that are prospecting that don't even know how to start the opportunity conversation, and everything in between. I feel like what you've built at ZoomInfo is specialized, but there's a path for everyone.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's necessarily too specialized, but have you kind of ever pulled anything back because you're like, that was a good hypothesis, we specialized in an area and it turns out it was too much and we pulled it back?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely thought about things from the perspective of, right, all right, here's an example, right? I oversee our outbound SDR function. So we've experimented in a ton of ways, right? Do we want SDRs specifically calling into net new accounts, and then a different team of SDRs calling into open opportunities and specialize to that front? No, that was wrong. That was not the way to do it. If it's new business, it's new business. To KD's point, like, yeah, you can over specialize and you can just handcuff yourself. Yeah. But when you're thinking about, right, I'm going to put Richard in a new business role. Well, I'm not going to put Richard in a new business role if he doesn't know how to start a net new conversation, right?
It's been a long time.
Yeah. Well, but that's it though, because like even from the hiring point, right, going through an interview, onboarding, I mean, we're thinking about what's the path for this person, and we're getting their take, right? Do you want to pursue a customer focused journey through the SDR team, or do you want to continue on a new business journey to go towards an account executive or towards an account management role, right? We'll listen to the SDR, but we'll also identify strengths, right? And make sure that we're not setting them up for failure, right? If somebody's really strong with handling the existing relationship, I'm not going to force that person onto a new business team. Wouldn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's issues to specialization where the individual, for lack of a term, isn't taken into consideration enough, and what they're doing. But yeah, if you try to go crazy with it and give every SDR a specialized function, yeah, you're going to implode.
It comes back to the optionality, and then also being really deliberate about what you're building. And I think optionality is huge, especially for the general career stage that somebody that's getting into a sales development function is at. Yeah. And I think the other piece on that too, Sean, like you're saying, like, be data driven, have a hypothesis, test it, and you know what? Hey, it turns out that we learned a lot And we're never going to do that again. And we're going to take those learnings and apply them just like you would at improving an email cadence, right? We're going to take that, iterate and learn and move from there.
For sure.
This was really, really awesome, Sean. This is the first time we've actually had you on Modern Sales Pros, which is crazy. I don't know where ZoomInfo has been hiding you. This was really, really thoughtful. Appreciate you taking some time out of your day to share kind of the growth of ZoomInfo and how you've thought about your sales development organization through those different iterations with us. And thank you as well to the team at ZoomInfo for both the sponsorship of the summit here and bringing us an amazing speaker in Sean, and also for the partnership that we have. Really enjoy working with the team. And I think it's kind of a de facto standard for most in revenue organizations that ZoomInfo is the best tool in the game. Trust us, we've tried almost all of them. And this actually concludes MSP University, Get Your PhD in PipeJet. So Sean, in a way, you were like our commencement speaker. We didn't even set you up for that appropriately. I feel honored. I'm honored. I appreciate this. Any closing words for the MSP University class of 2021? Apply sunscreen, specialize your SDRs?
Yeah, I definitely have to apply sunscreen. Oh yeah, I think it's just think about what you're doing and be data driven in everything that you do. I think that's one thing that we value in a great deal above all else. And don't do things without a reason, right? Don't just experiment to experiment. Do things strategically, learn from it, iterate, and then you'll be successful.
I think that's the best closing remarks we've ever had from a commencement speaker here at MSPU. So Sean, thank you for that. I know you're incredibly busy. Thank you for sharing your time here. For all the folks behind the scenes at the team at MSP, for all of the folks who attended here live today, for those in the future watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. I hope everybody stays safe. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And Sean, thank you again so much. Take care.
You got it. Thanks a lot, Richard.